Suso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under announcements, the board wanted to confirm, I don't know if you'd like me to do that or
Oh, that's right.
have you recount the two collective bargaining awards that were...
That's right. So in executive session this past week, we voted approval of the AFSCME contract, and so we need to announce that for the general public. I don't know that we need to cast another vote in public. It's simply enough that we cast the vote already and we announce it in a public session that we did so. And then there is the Firefighters Arbitration Award, which was announced to the board. There's no action that the board needs to take. We did submit this to the Finance Committee for their review, but because this is an arbitration award, the town is obligated to abide by it regardless of the vote of any body. So I think that's
Yes,
it.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And of course, town meeting regarding the firefighters arbitration award will need to take up appropriating the necessary funds, the supplemental funds needed to fund that award for FY14. Regarding AFSCME, and Heather, you can comment here if I've missed anything. With regard to AFSCME, my memory is that we have sufficient funds appropriated already in anticipation of that contract settlement, so there's no need for additional appropriation in that regard.
Will that come up in April for the next year's budget?
It will for FY15, yes.
There's also a settlement reserve in the budget that includes both fiscal 13 and 14 in the 14 budget. So that accommodates the settlement agreement.
But this means we can have an affirmative recommendation
Correct.
on Article 5?
And the Finance Committee will be making that.
Great.
Do you want me to keep moving along, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, if you could explain the CIC grant here for our information.
Yes, the board has a brief summary of this grant application. I'll make a couple of comments and I'll invite Heather to comment as well. The board may recall we've been involved in, as part of the overall directive from the Board of Selectmen to consolidate departments and functions and offices and become more efficient in the way we do our regular business. I have been exploring the consolidation of the police, fire, and public works dispatch functions. Currently, police and fire have separate standalone 24/7 dispatch functions, as do many other municipalities. And we, at your most recent meeting, the board will recall that Representative David Vieira announced that he has been able to set aside $50,000, and I've been working with David on that to help oversee that, the implementation of that process. It is going to take some time. We're working with unions on both sides, so this does not happen overnight. It also involves ultimately equipment purchase and preparing space for a consolidated dispatch center. We've also identified, just within actually since the last selectmen's meeting, that we may be able to compete for Community Innovation Challenge grant funds that the state has available to help underwrite the cost of this transition. And Heather is taking the lead on working to assemble this grant. It would require, however, the approval of the Board of Selectmen to authorize us filing the grant application. They are due in the current round on November 22nd. We have a good sense working with police chief, fire chief, and public works director of really where we're going and what we need to do. And I know we've had some modest conversations with the board pursuant to that overall direction. And there is no local match required for this grant, but it would be certainly timely and I believe very innovative for a number of municipalities if we're able to move forward with this. So that's a spirit within which we intend to apply for the grant with the board's concurrence, of course, and authorization that we do so. So I would ask your vote of approval of that. And Heather, any gaps you want to fill in there in terms of my comments are welcome.
I would move that the Board of Selectmen authorize town manager and assistant town manager to proceed with the applying for the Community Innovation Challenge Grant.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, and the motions, we have, we'll start with the ESCO. I do believe that the Finance Committee voted a different motion.
Here, shall we
So
go?
we have,
Should I give the,
we do have Mr. Lowell here.
yeah, copies of that, thanks. And what's being passed out, Mr. Chairman, are the three that we identify on page 2 are three feasible options under consideration. As has been noted, the Finance Committee just this evening voted for one of those, I believe, alternative C, the revised town and school facilities. Heather, would you want to walk through these briefly for the board's information?
Sure, this is just a very, a snapshot of each of the projects that we've considered over the last several weeks since the joint meeting of the Finance Committee, School Committee, and Selectmen. The first one is the original ESCO project, the $4.5 million, and that's a share of $3.2 million for school, $1.3 million town, project in 13 municipal facilities. And that overall, the debt service estimate on that was about $405,000. Energy savings of approximately $177,000 with a net cost to the town of $228,000 a year over the life of the project, which is estimated to be about 20 years. And that would be effective in fiscal 2017 with the project being initiated this spring. And just by comparison, a standalone project for Lawrence School windows and Morse Pond roof only, a $2 million note, the annual debt service on that would be about $189,000. So just shows the power of that program, of the ESCO program, demonstrates that approximately $39,000 a year, which is not an insignificant sum over 20 years, leverages $2 million in projects. So it allows you to do the project in the entirety. Alternately, the town wasn't sure where the school committee would be on this, so we looked at town projects only, and we looked at all of the town projects that the ESCO identified. And that was approximately a $2.5 million project in 14 facilities with an annual debt service of approximately $232,000 a year and annual energy savings of $199,000, bringing the annual cost down to $33,000 a year after savings. Again, these are all very preliminary numbers. They're at about 75%, and those will be narrowed down over the next several months. And then finally, a revised project. We do have a desire to have a project with the schools. That was where we started, was a joint project with the school committee. Was a $2.5 million project with 17 facilities. And that simply removes the roof and the windows out of that project, leaving a joint project with $1.2 million school and $1.3 million town, with a debt service of about $233,000, annual savings of $172,000, and an annual cost of approximately $60,000 a year debt service. So they're all feasible projects. They're all options. They're all options that Train would work with us on. But really, it's the board's decision. I can tell you that I attended both the Finance Committee meeting and the school committee. Mr. Lowell's here, but both the chairman and the vice chairman advocated strongly a change from their prior position on ESCO, advocating for the revised town school facility project, and that prevailed affirmatively with 2 opposing votes. The school committee following has voted to endorse the revised town school facilities project without the windows and the doors. I think that was a unanimous vote for the school committee on that. There is one small nuance to that, and that is, I'm not sure how this developed, but there is a desire to advance the window and door project faster than contemplated outside of the ESCO by funding the design of the windows in the capital plan. They would increase the capital plan by $60,000 to advance that project for some sort of a vote and decision in April or another future town meeting.
So we wouldn't have to vote on that capital project tonight?
Yes, they would amend the capital plan to include that this evening.
So they would be amending the capital plan to include the windows and
Include
the
design
roof?
for the windows, design for the windows only.
Windows only,
Yes.
outside of the ESCO project?
The windows in this building are identified as a safety risk. Well, there isn't an appetite to include it in the ESCO. There's a strong desire by both boards to advance that project now.
Did they explain why they don't want it in the ESCO? Why they would want to do it in the capital plan?
There was
I'm just
discussion
curious
about that. I
as
don't
to
want to
why.
speak first.
No, I know.
Too much. Clearly, it was the payback on the roof and the windows, that there's a long payback period, and they didn't feel that that was appropriately placed in the ESCO. And that was enough to, and I think the project scope of $4.5 million was a larger number than there was an appetite for. The $2.5 million was a smaller scale, lower risk, leaves $10 million in potential ESCO projects. Remember, there's $13 million scoped out as potential ESCO programs, leaving $10 million for future projects if the ESCO model is determined to be something that the town has a desire to continue with.
Mr. Lowell, I think could shed some light if you want to.
Yeah, just briefly, because I know
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about it.
I understand. No, the reason that we do not feel comfortable putting the windows and the roof in is that they are $2 million projects that have just a little bit over $4,000 in energy savings. So the return on that investment is very poor. So what that does is it puts pressure on the, within the Prop 2.5 levy limit by funding for capital projects that we essentially don't pay for themselves. The premise of the ESCO, and what we feel pretty strongly, is that we want the energy savings to roughly equal the expenditures for the projects. The second reason that the windows and roofs are not in there is because there is a substantial markup for trains services, and we feel it doesn't make sense to pay for that markup on a project like windows and doors that don't require the same level of engineering expertise that it does to do the automated controls, the HVAC systems, that a lot of the other things that you would expect train to be very knowledgeable in. On these things, they're straightforward projects that we think we can do. I'd say those are probably the two most important reasons.
I just have one question. The $60,000, if, say for instance, it doesn't get funded through a debt exclusion or something thereabouts, and we needed to put this back into a future ESCO project, would that $60,000 be wasted?
The capital, you're talking about
The 60,000,
The
this is really,
capital
this is a quid pro quo. We need to keep that in mind, folks, that $60,000 is roughly, is part of an inducement for us to go
It
along
might
with.
be considered wasted because
That's what I'm
if we
asking.
put it into an ESCO, I imagine the ESCO contractor, whether it's Train or if we decide to go with somebody else, is not going to want to take somebody else's report and use that as the foundation for their work, I imagine.
But the windows aren't going to be part of ESCO.
No, but what Kevin is suggesting is that if we spend the $60,000 to do the design work outside of the ESCO, but then at some future date we decide to do the windows under a future ESCO, a separate from what we're doing here, that second ESCO probably isn't going to use the $60,000 that we've spent.
I don't see anything changing to get the finance committee to support.
Well, I agree with you, but all I'm saying is maybe we could get them to agree without the $60,000 at that point, because no one knows. There are a lot of competing interests that are going to be at the ballot. We know we've got wastewater, we know we have water filtration, besides the multitude of other ones that are out there. I don't want to back ourselves into a corner. That's the only downside. And if we back ourselves into a $60,000 corner, what are we going to do? And we're going to roll the dice, and what happens if it doesn't pass at the ballot? Now we're going to eat the $60,000, try to put it into the ESCO. The other last question I have, how far down the list were these windows and roofs? I mean, on our capital plan, I need to ask the town manager, because we moved them up because they fit in the ESCO.
Well, as we are moving these other 14 and other 17 projects are moved up to the top of the list.
Without a doubt, you're right.
Well, they were removed from the capital list, working in strong partnership with the previous school superintendent, who enthusiastically acknowledged that they should be part of the ESCO.
Mr. Lowe, you had something first to consider?
Yeah, I would say that it's not reasonable to think that Train or any other company would recognize the $60,000 we spent on these windows as a starting point for their work. Hopefully they'd look at it, but to honor that price is probably not correct. However, should it get rolled into an ESCO, then at least we know what the project should cost compared to what Train or somebody else is actually going to charge us for those. Second thing is that we can apply for the mass school building, forget the acronym,
MSBA.
and they paid for 30-something% of the North Falmouth and East Falmouth roof projects that we did back in 2010, we funded. So there should be a savings involved by going through that route. Thirdly, we already have $53,000 committed for this investment grade energy audit. If we don't do it, that's gone. So you could think of it, if you want to think of it as a this for that, I mean, there already is money risked on the table. But this, if you take the $60,000 out, I think that you would have a lot of objection from the school committee. Whereas right now, they feel not everyone's totally comfortable, but they're supportive of the plan, knowing that the windows are going to be advanced one way or the other.
So, to be clear, C just does not include the windows. It's just the project without the 60,000?
Without windows and without roof, correct.
Without the windows and without the roof?
Correct.
So we can recommend that going forward and then deal with the 60,000 at some other point in the
can.
town meeting or
No, that's tonight.
next
Yeah.
April?
Yeah.
What?
No, that's tonight.
That's,
What's
they're
They're
gonna,
gonna make an amendment to the capital budget tonight, put that 60,000.
Oh, so that'll have to come up for a debate in the capital budget,
Right.
but not in this?
Right.
right.
Before this, it will be up before this.
Can we be clear when we make the presentation, the difference between B and C, that there are different projects that are listed in B that aren't going to be done in C because we're doing the other projects in C, is that correct?
So we have 3 presentations prepared depending on the vote of this board, and only one will be presented.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so at this point, the question for the board is, do we want to continue to pursue option A? Do we want to go with option B, or based on the vote of the finance committee and the school committee, do we want to go with option C?
Just one more question, and this does not, in the presentation also talk, there is a possibility of that cost being reduced if we receive the different interest?
Yeah, there are multiple ways to reduce it,
Okay.
the interest subsidy, the
Right.
Incentives, as well as the loan term.
Right.
None of those are known.
But this is sort of worst case, which I think is a
Yeah.
very smart way of presenting it. I would move that we support option C. I think our best chance of getting this passed is to make sure we have the support of the finance committee and the school committee, and I think it's a reasonable sort of compromise of everything that's been presented.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I'm not happy about it.
I'm not either, to be perfectly honest with you. I understand where the finance committee's coming from in terms of the cost of the windows and so on, but honestly, I agree with where Kevin's going, that it's quite likely that if you put the windows up for an override in the spring, or whenever the school committee decides to pursue it, that it could get shot down, because people are going to sit there and say, well, the
Windows
windows work
again?
just fine. Yeah, it's risking, I think, voter overload, but if this is what's going to fly in order to get the other projects done, so be it.
But it's a 2/3 vote we have to get.
Yeah.
And to try to get this passed without the support of finance committee and school committee, we will not get it passed.
I agree with you there. You know, I realize that there's, you know, we have to have some compromise here. But I'd be a lot more comfortable if we didn't put the 60,000 into the capital budget this town meeting, that we looked at it maybe in the spring or next fall, that we put it into the design. We're rushing a project that is not on the funding stream.
Well, we can argue that one as that's going to be a
Yeah,
separate.
It's not a part of that, it's not part of this debate.
It's not part of, but I'm just saying that to acknowledge that was part of the reasoning for their vote, and I know that the finance committee is going to move that forward as an amendment. Okay.
I agree with you.
All right, last discussion, last questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Mr. Chairman, could I mention on page 1, there's a summary of ESCO benefits versus conventional funding?
Yep.
Just for the board's edification, I know you're familiar with that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point it out. And this is being made available to town meeting members this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Article 31, there's a new motion. We're going to, it's being proposed that the board amend this. Is that amend the original motion by the Community Preservation Committee?
So I can help with that one. That is the Community Preservation Committee's recommendation or main motion on the Lawrence Academy building. Includes a preservation restriction in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. That is the most stringent preservation restriction that you can place on a building. It is not required by the Community Preservation Act because the town owns the building already. And so we're recommending that the board insert the words "or equal" after properties, so we don't end up in the same similar conundrum that we have with the Great Rock. We do not know what whether the building meets the standards for the Secretary of Interior. That preservation work has not been done yet. We're not opposed to some type of limitations for the preservation of the building. We've handled that building as a historic property and worked with historical commissions on the board.
I read that. That makes a lot of sense. I just don't know what it means. Or equal. Equal to what?
For example, equivalent could be an agreement with the historical commission. We don't know what or equal is.
We don't know what.
We don't have
to
a
be
proposed
expended-
or equal, but we know we have some grave concerns about the Secretary. of the
So
Interior.
it's historic properties or equal?
I think it's
meaning
standards.
something related to historic
Standards.
properties?
Standards,
Or
the
equal.
Secretary of Interior standards, or equivalent standards,
Oh, equivalent standards.
or equal
Oh,
standards.
okay, I see. what
So
you
either the standards in the Secretary of
I got it.
Interior, if eligible, or
mean. Okay, I move that.
Second.
Motion and a second to recommend the new motion. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. All right, we have 5 minutes to 7. Is there anything else that we need? Well, let's see. Do we need to do the date for town meeting right now?
Well, at the end
Have
of
that
that.
handy?
Ideally, yeah.
April 7th?
April 7th? And that doesn't conflict with Passover, Easter, any other religious holidays?
We will confirm that before the close of town meeting.
Okay, so do we want to wait then and do this tomorrow night, or?
Well, town meeting just might end tonight, so we should be ready.
I
I
would be
mean,
sad-
it's a dream, I know I'm
Surprise.
dreaming, but you never
Surprise.
know. It's happened before,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you don't have your answer.
Sorry?
Confirm at the break.
It was
Okay.
confirmed at the break, yeah.
All right,
do we schedule
so,
a special at that time also, or do we?
why don't we, let's finish this piece of business first. Do we want to have a motion that we'll do April 7th
I'm gonna
pending
make the 7th.
confirmation?
Yeah, pending confirmation at the break.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous.
Becky has a calendar, she says it doesn't have.
Okay. And
There's nothing.
We had a request from Water Quality Management Committee,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, and Jerry may have that with him, I'm not certain.
if it's something you can do in 60 seconds.
Virginia,
yes.
sorry.
Right, although if you're meeting tomorrow night, that's also, we had submitted the flow neutral bylaw to Bob Alment for his comments October 13th. He got back to us Saturday night, and we went through all of his comments. We think only one of them has real merit, so there would be one section of that bylaw that would be amended. We would make the amendment on town meeting floor. And so I wanted, on behalf of the committee, to bring that to your attention. It's on page 22,
Okay.
if you want to look at the warrant booklets. So Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to proceed, or we can wait until tomorrow night.
How would the board like to proceed? Do you want to
I
wait
think you
tomorrow?
sent us, you emailed us.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been circulated through Julian and Heather, it was sent to you. Basically, Bob pointed out that there are certain zoning districts where 6 units are allowed by right now in the zoning, and this flow neutral bylaw didn't address that particular point. And so this amendment, which on page 22, where it says multifamily residences for new development, you will have the existing sentence: a new multifamily dwelling is allowed 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet by right. An additional sentence will be: in zoning districts where up to 6 units per acre are allowed, up to 3 bedrooms per unit are allowed by right. So we're basically saying, however many units they build in these zoning districts, these particular general residence zoning districts, whatever number of units they buy, they can have 3 bedrooms.
So it makes more sense for us to make that as our main motion than to have the water quality manager come up and make an amendment to our main motion?
I think it's a question, who puts it on the floor? We could put it on the floor, or you guys, it's just a matter of saying you guys concur.
I have no problem with deferring to the Water Quality Management Committee and allowing you folks to make that
To make a
change.
main motion, but
I think we need to make a motion, candidate, though, to support the amendment. I make a motion that we support the amendment.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Last discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
If the
Unanimous.
moderator approves us making it within the main motion, we'll do that. If he doesn't, because it's his call.
Motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.